We're good. Okay. Welcome to spring planning. I call this meeting to order. In the essence of the amount of information we are about to receive, I want everyone to know how much I appreciate all of the hard work, all of the presentations, all of the data. And we all have read it. We're very appreciative of it. And if I rush you along, it's not, they don't respect all the work you put in. But we have a lot to go over. So in the essence of that, that's my 5 minutes. Welcome introduction. Go. Meeting overview.
All right, thank you very much. So just very briefly, everything here comes from this strategic business plan. Those three main items are the number one priority, replacement of the bridge; two, establishing financial self-sustainability; and three, providing the highest level of service that we are able. In the fall 24 planning outcomes, the goals that came out of that: one, safety is top priority; two, improve transparency; three, pursue projects that will generate positive net income; four, pursue practices that will decrease operational costs; five, review, create port policies; six, prepare for bridge replacement; and seven, invest in employee training and education. The themes, I'm not going to read all the themes, but I do want to focus on the first one that says from the fall of 24 session that the commission continues to see a role for the port in the community after bridge replacement, focusing on economic and recreational development. And so just want to reinforce that. Those other themes are all very prevalent in all of these documents. The only other thing that I'll draw your attention to, and that is the budget calendar. So you can see how much progress staff has made on the budget process. So I'm going to check with Debbie. Are you ready to do your thing, the 10-year forecast?
Yeah, whenever.
Okay, so I wanted to get out of there in less than 5 minutes.
Love it.
Just to make sure that I'm on the right, everything looks good as far as those goals and priorities, right?
Okay.
Of course.
Under the theme, the first one,
Yes.
and I remember when we all agreed to that,
Mm-hmm.
but I personally think it's healthy every year, 2 years, come back and rethink about that. Because it could be, we could get to the point where it doesn't make a lot of sense to continue forward. And maybe there's another way to support the community. Not saying that I got the magic answer right now, but I think it's healthy that we consider that every month. Don't automatically assume.
I think it's good that we pointed out.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much. And I will turn it over to Debbie. And I do have to say before we start, I mean, this is a game changer for spring planning to have this information for everyone. So this helps speed stuff up because it's very black and white now.
Well, and I think hopefully what you saw in this was that all the things that we've been talking about kind of in general show up in here. So as you go through and you look at you know, our industrial property revenue and things like that, you can see we have vacancies. As you go through and look, the parks, you know, the parks always cost money and don't bring in much revenue. So that just is played out in there. Some of the things that we're doing will hopefully generate some revenue. So I tried to put some of that in to give a chance for some discussion. Just because it's in the forecast doesn't mean that that's what we have to do, but it kind of gives you some ideas of the things that we could do. I know Kevin's constantly coming to me with new ideas of what if we did this? How much money would that make? And so it hopefully starts that discussion of do we want to go down this path? You know, are there better alternatives for some of our properties, things like that. I am not going to go through all these numbers in detail, so and I'll be happy to answer questions. But I did want to go through just a little bit and talk about, especially on the summary pages. When you look at, for example, the industrial properties, they're pretty much making money every year. I put in the best capital outlay information that I had as far as like replacing roofs and things like that. I always feel like there needs to be some a contingency in there. And so I did actually put in contingency because I feel like for one thing, we all know as homeowners or even renters, whatever, that things come up that you don't expect. So there's always that. But there's also we did have a company go through a couple of years ago and do some projections on when things would need to be replaced. But my gut feeling was that that wasn't really complete. And so even though I use that and I talked to Ryan and all of that, I think that that's an area where we could use more focus now is on the capital going forward. So when I look at these, again, I put in contingency just so that we're looking at something that's maybe more realistic. And I always try to be conservative. I always try to have, hopefully our revenues will come in higher than I forecast. Hopefully our expenditures will be lower than I forecast. So I always try to take that tact so that we're not caught off guard and that we're not caught in a situation where we don't have the money to pay for something that we need to pay for.
Could I ask you a couple questions? 'Cause
Certainly.
I've gone through all your papers.
Of course you have. I knew you would.
If we could we go to, I think it's the second to the last page of the big sheets, and it talks about these administrative costs.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I want to understand, because on your other sheets by project, you have a line called internal service charge.
Yes.
And I'd like to get a feel for what is that?
Okay.
And then how did you prorate it back to each of the sub-projects, if you will?
Yes. So, and actually, I do want to point out, Mr. Beaker was very astute in pointing out that there are two errors in here because that is a new line item in the other areas. And on the Halyard building and also on Marina Basin, I didn't do a copy and paste all the way across to get that all the way across. It doesn't have a material impact on the analysis for these, but I did want to acknowledge that there was that error in there. So to go back just a little bit, in the past, our administration has kind of been, and not hidden, but kind of buried in other, so it was included in the costs and not called out for each of our properties and for each of our cost centers, if you will. And so it was shown in the wages. And so, for example, Kevin and I were split between every single property that we own and every single cost center that we own. So it was this huge split of, 1.75% over here and some tiny little bit over there, and maybe a little bit bigger, on the bridge or whatever. But it wasn't really clear what our overhead costs were and who was paying for those. So one of the things that a lot of governments do is they have what's called an internal service fund. I call ours the administration fund because that's really what it is. It's the executive area, it's the finance area, it's human resources, it's all those things that show up in here. And then those get allocated out. They get allocated out on different bases. So it depends on what the driver is for the cost in each of those areas. And some of them can be really clear cut, like FTE. We allocate out human resources and payroll based on FTE because that's kind of the driver of the cost, is how many employees do you have? It gets a little bit harder with some of the other areas like the executive department, like finance in general, because, for example, we do accounts payable for every department, but we don't track it down to every little, every single check. I don't have, the number of checks by department, that kind of detail. Although I am thinking about implementing some ways to track some of that information better so that we will have better drivers going forward.
How was this done?
So this one was done mostly on size of budget. because that also will indicate complexity
But
usually.
is it the size of budget without this element in it?
Yes,
Okay, so if I would add up on the other sheets, all of your proposed expenditures,
mhm,
not excluding this account called
internal service.
internal services. And if you took that by each of the areas, it adds up to a number. You take this number as a percentage of the total back against the percentage of that
Yes,
on a weighted basis.
yes. Yeah,
And then is the plan moving forward to basically allocate more so that you can really determine, yes, we have a making stuff up, big seven takes an exorbitant amount of time. This is how much we're really allocating towards our administrative resources versus what the income is.
yes. And one of the things that we did implement as well, just about a year ago, was to start tracking our time by property, by where are we spending that time. That still makes it difficult for someone like me or even Kevin or any of our administrative staff, because we spend a lot of time, like I say, on accounts payable, where I'm doing a short amount of time, but it affects everybody. And so it's still a little bit of a challenge, but it's starting to give us better information, which is what we keep working towards, is getting better information to allocate these costs out.
So on the first account, executives contracting, which is primarily Kevin
And part of Patty.
and part of Patty. How did you spread that? Is that on a weighted basis again on the expenditure budget, including or excluding finance in that?
It was mostly on the expenditure budget, excluding any other.
Okay, you say mostly. Now, what I'm used to is, and federal government's all over this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah,
There's a whole disclosure statement that you have to make that tells anybody that wants to know how the calculation works.
right.
Do you have such a document?
I don't have a document. I could put one together fairly easily because I have the spreadsheets that do the work. And so they have all the percentages in them.
I think it would be very helpful for the commission and the budget committee to understand that.
Yeah.
It gives you a good feel for, okay, what of this stuff is what I call direct drive? What is a tax that we have to pay, but how is that tax allocated in each one? So if you're trying to reduce costs, you've got to know the influence of that tax and how it's calculated.
And it will change between last year, so fiscal year 25, the year we are in. I have to stop saying last year, this year, and next year, because it depends on what basis you're looking at it from. It's going to change because we have better information. And so every year I'm hoping, yeah.
I'm absolutely fine with that, but
Right.
you need to update your, what I call the
Exactly.
disclosure statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would think with this kind of a document, you need to have the disclosure statement on top of it that says, okay, here's how these numbers, back on page 47, how you took page 47 and spread it up into all of the accounts.
Yeah, and I can have that to you by our budget meeting, because
Okay.
I have all that information.
Could I check my understanding on one thing?
Mhm.
And that is, as we're moving forward, the specific percentage of internal service charges to say industrial property,
Mhm.
right, is going to be based on looking back. Now that we're doing tracking,
Mhm.
looking back and saying, hey, we spent administratively this percentage, so that's how we're going to choose. But we're going to have some loss in accuracy there because it's not going to necessarily have predictive things in it. It's going to be based on this past knowledge. And is that going to lag by 1 year or 2 fiscal years?
Well, so for the budget, it lags by one,
Right.
roughly, because I look at everything through, January, February to start working on the budget.
Okay.
And then the other thing though, is that for actuals, I actually true those up during the year.
Okay, so there's going to be an issue here, is that if you're not 100% past assign your time sheets, okay, you've allocated the budget based on your disclosure statement. how are you tracking the actuals into it? If you're doing it actually where you actually spent the time, there's gonna be a disconnect.
Well, there's always a portion that's allocated that on our timesheets, there's always a part that is like accounts payable, that is like accounts accounts receivable is mostly easier to allocate, but it's going to have those overhead budget preparation, for example, audit time. They're always going to have those general amounts that are still going to be allocated out based on the budget for those amounts. But the actual, so when, for example, Big Seven has taken more of our time than was originally anticipated because I had assumed that we were either going to sell it or that we were just going to, I did not anticipate all the time that maintenance and even Kevin and all of that would be spending on that building, because I thought we were either going to sell it or just populate it and be done. So it has used up more
We're
time.
gonna have to be careful if you use that history in the next year to reallocate off your disclosure statement, how you're gonna spread time. It may be that you're not gonna spend that much anymore,
Exactly.
so you gotta put some thought into it.
Oh, yeah.
Adjust it.
Oh, yeah,
And are
definitely.
you going to be mimicking this model towards other systems, like, for example, like the airport, the marina, so that we can determine?
Well, they all get charged our overhead
Okay.
now. Yeah, yep.
So, one other observation on page 47. Well, question first, when did you assume the new bridge will be put in place?
So that fell in the middle of all my forecasting, all the new information. I have tried to get everything to be 3032, that the new one would be put into operation. Because it's in its, I mean, it does impact this. There's probably about, maybe I'd have to go back and calculate, but I think about 25%, well, probably less than that. 20% maybe is going to the bridge right now of the internal service fund.
Where I was going with all this,
Mhm.
is just looking at the page 47. Your revenue matches your expenditure, and of course, I understand that.
Yeah,
When I just look at the revenue, I see no drop at all because the bridge went into service. So
Yeah, I
we're
mean-
saying having the bridge or not having the bridge, as far as overheads, doesn't mean anything.
yeah, and Kevin and I have talked about that, the fact that it's going to drop off when the new bridge opens. But
We talked about, and I'm gonna be a little honoring, we talked about this a couple of years now. And the action was for Kevin and you guys put together a plan of, are you gonna shrink? You're looking at a 10-year plan, I don't see anything how we're gonna shrink.
And that's because we keep running the bridge out kind of to the end of that, so. No, it is. I mean, if we have to lay people off, we have to lay people off. I mean,
That's
that
not
would
what
be,
I was after. What is your plan? No matter when the bridge goes away, what's your plan to first off, are you going to shrink the organization? Or you're not?
well, and it depends on what you choose to do to expand. If we have to switch people from the bridge, which again, doesn't take up a huge amount of our time anymore, switch people from the bridge to, say, storage units out at Odell, or if we buy another property that we have to manage, things like that. I mean, things are going to shift hopefully between now and then. We won't stay static.
This does not show the shift.
No, because I don't know what that shift is.
That's what we've asked you guys to come up with. You have to come up with, here's your assumption on when the bridge is going away. Could be right, could be wrong, but it's the assumption.
And that was the document that we brought in fall planning, when that showed here's the projects when we think we're coming online. I just don't know if those got into.
Those projects are in here, yes.
Gotcha. And I think there was 4.5 FTE between the toll booth closure and when the bridge goes away. I think there was
Yeah, about 4 actually.
4, yeah, exactly.
So the only impact getting rid of the bridge is 4 FTEs.
Yeah, 4.5.
I mean, the bridge honestly doesn't take staff that much time. We contract everything out, so it really doesn't take staff that much time.
But we should see reduction in cost for what's contracted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I like to see that in the proper sheet.
Okay. And that's in the contracting itself is in the I can look at the bridge on the last page. On the last page, but it actually only runs out through 3032 because that was my assumption on it. And then it just ends.
That's page 51.
Because all the contracting is direct costs. Yeah. So it's all in there because it's direct cost. It doesn't run through overhead. And so it goes through 3032.
But you've got indirect maintenance, admin, and M&S through 32.
Yes. Well, because the bridge does, I mean, we have to keep.
But you said before, playing a game here. You said the amount of money that you're going to spend on the bridge, for you guys is very small. What's $1 million? That ain't small. So my concern is, we're writing off part of this indirect accounts that we talked about. You're writing off a pretty good chunk of it onto the bridge. When the bridge goes away, what happens to that 1.2 million? It's
Right.
gonna get sucked into the other accounts, which could cause us to go further negative.
No, it would be reduced. We would get rid of that cost. If that involved layoffs or then whatever that involves, we would stop that because we can't just charge it willy-nilly to somebody else. So that would need to go away. When the bridge goes away, the costs with it have to go away. Whatever those costs are by 3032, they have to go away.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What does that look? Because I don't think we've really looked at it yet. And this question goes back a couple of years. Yeah, I'm thinking the right one. Who's gonna be bugging you to keep up with this?
You can come back to our meeting. You can invite you back to your meeting, our meetings, and you can come back whatever you want.
Well, it's a safe assumption now that you have the software and the information that what Commissioner Fox is talking about is going to continue to evolve and be tightened up.
Oh, it'll definitely be evolving, yes.
Better.
Trust and verify. Yeah. I'm just concerned, guys, that when the bridge goes away, this big indirect cost is either gonna have to go away, or it's gonna get pushed over on the remaining work, which in a bunch of areas, we're not even at break even right now.
Right.
And this is gonna throw us more into the negative. So I'm really after what's our ramp down plan? And you gotta assume a date, and it could be right, could be wrong, but you've got a plan now. I really encourage us to get out in front of that instead of chasing the ball.
So I guess what I'm gathering from looking at this is, all of these documents run through 35. And whereas the bridge only runs through 32. So it's kind of I guess the reason we're not seeing it is because the bridge information takes us right up to the cutoff.
Right,
That's the cliff right there.
right.
So what you'd like to see is, hey, let's stretch this out a couple years
No,
and add
no.
the cutoff information.
No, what happens, if you're looking, this one goes from 31, 32.
Yes,
If you go to any of these charts,
yeah.
31,
30.
32, and it goes into next year,
Right,
there's no big increase in in this account we're talking about.
right, it changes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really show the impact of what's gonna happen when that bridge goes away. It magically fixes itself.
But it shouldn't show up in the other ones. Where it should show up is in the administration fund, because the administration fund is what has to be shrunk. Is the
Exactly.
administration fund for
And
that,
the
yes.
administration fund
Doesn't show it,
it's
that's
gonna-
correct.
Which means the other sheets are incorrect because by definition, it's gotta go up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I beat that one to death. I apologize.
Well, you get around.
Okay. So on the summary pages, so for industrial property, as I said, everything is looking pretty good. I did include that $500,000 contingency on each of those because that's probably the biggest area that I struggle with as far as I need better capital improvement planning.
Only seeing the contingency on the industrial property page, not on other.
The other ones aren't. The other ones aren't as building intensive, I guess, other than commercial, and commercial's already in the hole. And we have to figure out how to fix that. Commercial is its own world. And so I kind of left that alone.
Okay.
But it's the one, for example, a lot of our other areas, if there's a building leak in one of our buildings, like there's a major roof issue, we have to fix that, because if we don't
Right.
fix that, we're going to watch our just deteriorate. Whereas other areas don't seem to have that urgency, I guess, with big potential costs.
Right, and like, for instance, the airport, the capital purchases actually sort of is the contingency there.
Yeah,
It really is, because we're really talking, for the most part, about, infrastructure improvements that are gonna be 90% funded by the FAA, and hopefully another 9%, funded by the state,
right.
leaving us with 1%, which hopefully is a nice small amount, but I get that, but I am concerned about the commercial properties
But
not.
before we get to commercial, let's
Having
look
a
at page 25, which is Wasco.
Right.
That's, to me, on the surface, that's our worst performing.
This year,
But even when you look out for the next 10 years, it is not a great big money maker for us.
Correct.
So is there a way that we can get that revenue up? Or
Well,
is
if
there
the
someplace-
city were to give us a conditional use permit,
There are ways.
that could make a big
yeah, we
difference.
are hearing that if the zoning was different, we could make more money.
I do feel that, but in support of the port's goal of economic development and job creation. If that building isn't going to make money, at least we are providing a public service into
And I like public service,
helping.
but I like making money more for the port and
True.
being able to provide services down in the green area and keep our restrooms open all year and
Very
stuff
true.
like that.
Hopefully, I think that the intent is that the Wasco building will become less of a money
Well, it
drain.
it's, as Commissioner Fox pointed out, it's never been a big moneymaker. It won't be. And so the question is, and this comes back to the commissioners, this is the question for you. Do you want to continue to keep it for, as you say, economic development? Let it, when it had a sole tenant in it, it really wasn't a big deal. It was an easy, what, 100,000 a year, because they just paid and they took care of everything and it was all easy. But now having multiple tenants in it, that takes more, it takes up more of all of our time to manage a building that has multiple tenants in it, of course. And so is it worth it for just the, going back to 100,000 a year or something like that? Is it worth it? I don't know. And that's again, a question for you. Do you want to keep it? Do you want to continue to do a public service with it? Or do you want to sell it and then perhaps invest the money in something else? And that's the point to these forecasts, is to kind of show you where you're at.
So I think we ought to adopt some kind of a grading scale that says, hey, this investment is a yellow. It's not really producing a lot. It should be on a watch list. Is there some actions we can take with the city zoning or anything else that could raise the rate of return for us? And that's why it's on a yellow caution flag. If it's full green, leave it alone, keep going. If it's a red, let's get rid of it. But I think if we're gonna have it on a yellow, we gotta put together an action plan to either get it to green or get it to red. And we would be, I was looking for staff and consultants to develop that action plan to move it from either yellow to a green or yellow to a red. And come back to the commission with, okay, here's, to get it to a green, here's what we'd have to do.
I think that's one of the things with the new property manager position. They'll be able to dive in and really help with that analysis.
But I would hope coming out of this discussion, if everybody agrees, you guys do that when you get the new person on board. This is one of the action items for that person.
I'd like to add a couple things. I see a building like the Wasco building is having two different kinds of return. One is obviously the direct return of the dollars. But the other is as a space that can incubate and grow local businesses like that. If we're not making a lot of money, but we have the next frame or in situ or something that's kind of growing up out of there, that's the kind of economic development that, you know, we're here for. So the value of that building to us, from my perspective, is directly proportional to how much demand there is for those sorts of businesses. If we're not getting any businesses coming and saying, hey, you know, we've got this new idea and, you know, we need a little help starting out, but we have pie in the sky projections. We're really optimistic and excited about this new opportunity. We're disrupting some industry or whatever. That's great. If we're not having any businesses approaching us and we're not marrying up with any businesses through other means, and we're having to scrape, you know, the streets trying to find tenants, then that building isn't doing, you know, that's the question we have to ask. Why is the building not doing what it's supposed to do? And then
I think you bring up a really good point. What we're missing, guys, is that what's the status of our tenants in there? How long have they been there? Are they growing? Does it look like they're gonna succeed? Do we keep them in there for 20 years, even though they're not succeeding? Or is there a philosophy that at some point, maybe we need to let them go and try and bring somebody else in? If that's what our vision is for that building.
I think the Big Seven's been a great case study for this because it's really become this artist co-op. And so we're at 80% occupancy there. And just, you know, 2 years ago, we basically had one tenant, two tenants on the upfront. So absolutely, that's kind of turned, and sometimes the market kind of develops that for us in the sense that we weren't out there actually going after artists and craftspeople, but they came to it, and it's actually been quite
So let's carry this one step further. You know, the port keeps getting a bad rap for history. Okay, why aren't we creating, if it's true, creating a story that says we've provided this space, we've helped people get started. Here's the success that's happening. And it's because the port did it. Nobody else did it. We did it. And you never hear anything like that.
Yeah, we did a little thing on Wool Ceramics in the last newsletter.
Yeah.
You know, so, but your point's
Well,
right.
I think it's more
But I
than just
do-
our newsletter.
And I like what you're saying, and I think both of you are saying, is I do think it's probably good moving forward now that we're being more proactive, is to task our new property manager with a scoring system of not only our spaces, but of our tenants. You know,
right.
and I like that, you know, if we have things in the yellow, we either need to move them up to the green or, you know,
Move them out.
move them
I think
out.
it'd be really valuable. Again, I'm just growing the job description for that position. And do this. Go look at professional, like commercial incubation spaces around the country. How do they choose tenants? And they do boot tenants out once they get to a certain size. How do they decide that? Because then there are other people that want space. And because they're offering a discount, well, if you're amazing now, you know, you're like the next Microsoft, you don't need our subsidy anymore, right? So they have those incubation buildings and whatnot, they have a formula that they use, and that would be a great thing for that person to go look at that and collect that information, and then maybe we can not reinvent the wheel. I mean, with Big Seven, it's awesome, but and part of it's, you know, lots of people, people are doing great jobs, doing great work, and our own people, but we're also kind of got lucky, right? I mean, was there some great vision to go out and talk to all the artists and get them to come? I don't think there was. I mean, I think we kind of got lucky.
I think Sarah Wolf had a lot
Okay.
to do with that.
Right. There was some networking and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so back to being
Yeah.
high policy, spring planning, bringing it back in. I think that we've got some good stuff to continue to work on. But I do think that the biggest thing coming out of this is it's nice to be able to talk about things that we need to focus on because we already have the information. So.
yeah, this is amazing.
Absolutely.
Totally amazing.
The
Really
only
good
reason we're
baseline,
having
yeah.
this discussion, is we got it,
Yeah,
and that's really, really, really good. So if you go to the commercial side, I think we ought to be looking commercially in a similar manner. Which ones are green, which ones are yellow, which ones are red.
Yeah, they're all red. And we've had discussions about that. Is our rent too low or expenses too high? What is the issue with that? And we're still digging through that to try to figure that out. That one has bugged me since I got here that we need to figure that out. Yeah. And of course, support office, you know, that one, we're administrative, so, and we'll be moving at some point here in the next couple of years, so. Yes, we hope we're moving, I don't know, I like this bill, but yes, we do hope this gets moving forward.
Page 53.
Which one was that? I'm sorry, I just.
Rates and fees.
Oh, the rates and fees.
I'm just trying to help.
Thank you. Yes, because I know I'm out of time here, but that's not my fault. The rates and fees. A lot of them, we spent a whole lot of time last year on, Daryl spent a whole lot of time last year, really analyzing our rates and fees. And she spent a significant amount of time this year, but there were lots of increases last year. So that you look at the column, you see the rate for 24, 25, and then you see the percent increase that was from the prior year. And then we have our proposed rates for 25, 26, and then what that increase would be. And so not nearly as many, we kind of left a lot of it alone because there were some pretty big increases last year. So we left a lot of it alone for this year. And then she had some recommendations for a few changes. Was there anything I needed to? Oh, and then Kevin had some new ones, which was a great idea. The through the fence agreement lease for out at the airport, and also then a square footage for land leases.
Tours.
Tour. Thank you, Commissioner Beaker. And then the only other one that we put in here, I believe, was the under the administrative having, if people want to split, and we don't currently do this, we bill for T hangers out at the airport and for marina slips. We bill those on an annual basis and they're all due at once. There had been some discussion about actually breaking those up and letting people make multiple payments. So either semi-annual or quarterly. That would take additional staff time. And so we did put in a $25 fee per invoice if people want to split those up, but we currently don't do it. So,
So quarterly would cost an extra $100
If they want to do it for the full year, yeah. I think it's great. I think
give people options.
I think the options, it's a service to our users and our constituents, and it's at least a break even for us. So
Okay. And other than that, I didn't have a lot to say about the fees and charges, so I'd be happy to answer questions if I can.
Daryl, good job on all of this.
Thanks. And just so you guys know, too, on the marina, where the fees show on there that it went up 10%, it is actually 8%. The total fees include the assessment. So that's a flat fee that never increases. So last year, it was actually a 8% increase for their total mortgage. It's just the one section of it that went up 10, and that's the same thing we did this year. And then the year before that, there was no increase. So rates over 3 years have gone up 16%. It's,
But when I look, at this, and then I look back at your spreadsheets looked like it had some kind of an inflation index that you added each year. What was that per year?
For general inflation, I used 3.5% for this year and then dropped it down to 3% moving forward.
Right.
I know, I hope I am too. That's the problem, especially right now. It's like roll the dice. You talk to economists, they have no idea, and you get wildly different answers from them.
So living with your 3.5, 3, by not raising the rates here, we're not raising the revenue up to match. But
Actually, most of that was based on either growth. If there wasn't a 0%, I was
But we can't grow more boat slip.
oh no, the
Max
most
out.
split should have gone up by 10. Did they not go up by 10?
did.
Oh, okay.
Okay. They did.
Yeah, okay.
Which one didn't? It was the airport that didn't?
The airport went up by 3.
3. Okay, so you got it covered.
Or paid parking,
Paid parking did not change, yeah.
because we have some restrictions there on,
System.
well, it's actually a restriction on, access to the public lands, the, recreational immunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if that's the case, in your parking revenue, you need to bring that back down, don't you?
The parking revenue, we're just getting good information on that one because that one used to be split all over the place. And so it's just been since July 1 that I've started to get some good information on that. So that one might be off a little bit. It also, though, includes adding on 2 new parking
Yeah, but
lots.
we're paying for it too. I mean, we're.
Yeah, and they're in there, and the cost is in there.
So the cost for the new ones, has it been raised by 3% or 3.5%?
I used whatever Kevin told me to use. I'm sorry.
I guess the
I'm
point
sorry.
for bringing that up is there will be a single year bump in operational revenue.
No, I get
Yeah.
that, but it's because you spent money to add additional parking.
Yep.
I'm just trying to be consistent with your document for fees and your budget spreadsheets, and it looks like to me there's at least partial disconnect in the parking. It's not the same. Right?
I'll double check parking, but I tried to make it the same.
Wouldn't by the same token, there be a disconnect in tolls for the bridge? We're not raising those.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's obviously some choices there that are made about like what sort of fees we're imposing.
And I'm fine with it as long as this is consistent with what we're saying. And that brings the other point. Where is the document that says all of this stuff? Okay, we need that document that we know, here's what these numbers reflect, and it's consistent throughout.
And the first draft of that was shared with you a couple months ago. That was the forecasting assumptions that showed the projects and.
Yeah, I just want to know, what did you actually use in this?
Thank you, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to key issues and projects for 526. Debbie, back to you. This PERS grant assistance ride out program.
Yes, this may or may not come to fruition, but a year or so ago, I guess it was in the I don't know if it was in the last legislative session or the one before that, but anyway, they set aside $40 million. The state set aside $40 million to help buy down this PERS unfunded liability. And so they're really trying to encourage the PERS members, the PERS employers, to set up what they call side accounts, which is where you contribute money into PERS and then that basically buys down your rate because it's funding your unfunded liability. So the first, it's called the Employer Incentive Fund, and it opened for the first group of people to apply on April 1st of this year, so just this couple of weeks ago. It opened for them, and it was only available to people to local governments whose unfunded liability was 2 times their annual payroll. Well, we're not to that point yet. Ours is not 2 times our annual payroll, but there are actually a number of governments, I didn't add them up, but there's a number of governments where it is. And so they have the first basically chance to get this, some of this $40 million.
Can I check my understanding on something?
Yes.
It would be fair to say that those governments are not in great shape, right?
Actually, there's not. So there's not a direct correlation to how good your shape is based upon how much your unfunded liability is, believe it or
Okay, why
not.
not?
But
I mean,
let me, maybe simplify it.
Yeah, please.
Unfunded liability means whatever was set aside in the year that
In years
you
past.
earned cost,
Mhm.
if that budget didn't move into that account, it's underfunded.
It's underfunded because, and the primary reason that it's underfunded is that especially in the 1980s, the actuaries underestimated how long PERS employees would live. And so what they did was they set our rates back in the 80s too low. And we didn't pay in enough. We thought we were paying in. We always pay in whatever the actuaries tell us to pay in. But back then, it was too low and the actuaries were wrong. So all these people are living and still pulling on PERS that they earned back in the 80s, but the money was never put into PERS to cover
But the
that.
PERS, is that a state of Oregon thing?
Yeah.
It's not a port thing.
No.
It's a state of Oregon.
We are a member of PERS.
And then just to clarify, because I've had a lot of questions about this, we are required, like, we can't all of a sudden say, we don't want to offer PERS anymore.
That's correct. Once you're a member, you're kind of stuck.
So what, is there a law that says we have to do this?
You mean that we have to do PERS or that we have to contribute?
Have to contribute this extra money?
No. But it's a huge return on investment. If they match 1/4 of what we're putting in, that's a very large return on investment.
I thought they were matching 4 to 1, not 1/4.
Well, it's 25, whatever we put in, they'll match 25% of that.
Okay, so it's,
And the way that manifests itself going forward is that when we do our annual PERS contributions,
yeah,
that amount would be a little bit smaller
Yes,
every year.
they reduce our annual.
Gross, I think it's like, could be as much as 100 grand.
yeah,
Now there's net because that cash is generating interest in the bank, but the net between the interest it's getting on the bank and the potential savings and what we're paying to PERS every could be significant.
do we have or could we get the projected numbers?
Yes,
There's lots of assumptions.
I know, but if you're honest about all your assumptions up front, that's fine, but
yeah, the bigger, and also for the port, the other interesting piece of this will be if our number of employees decrease in the future, which we have been decreasing, of course, and by laying off the toll booth, of course, we just decreased there were 4 PERS employees. You have to be basically full-time. And so our numbers are reducing. So it's not we're not a straightforward example for me to use. So, because they have an online calculator and it still came out in our benefit to do it, but I need an actual person that knows more about this to go through and analyze all the pieces to determine.
I just know for myself, I want to see those projections.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a fantastic financial decision for us, or it could just be really mediocre based on.
Yeah.
There's a cool little calculator.
Is there?
Yeah, you put in whatever your assumptions are and it
Yeah.
spits out current versus proposed.
Would it be helpful if, because the city and the county are also probably talking through this exercise as well? It seems like instead of you looking into it, the city looking into it, the county looking in it, could we pool resources and maybe connect with those two agencies and say, let's look into this as a county, as an entity? That way we can educate our people better, because I think PERS is one of the things I get questions on the most. And so if we could educate our district or our constituents on how PERS works for everyone.
Yeah, that would be difficult. The county does already have site accounts, I know.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not sure that that they're looking at this.
Okay.
In the past, to get a site account, usually governments borrowed money to do it. They sold bonds to do it. Because the return, by buying down their PERS rate, they earned more than the cost of the interest on the bond.
So where we're going is if we're gonna invest $1.2 million, we would like to see what kind of reduction would we have in PERS.
Right.
On here, and if it's a small fraction of the $1.2 million, we would probably ask the next question, that if we didn't do this and you retired, would your retirement get impacted by not doing this?
My retirement won't.
Because you're not in PERS?
No, I'm in PERS, but you have to pay, my retirement is, so this has gone through the courts. My retirement is set in stone and you can't change it.
Exactly. So
So
at the end of the day, the state's gonna be on the hook for it.
at the end of the day, the port is on the hook for it.
How can the state come back to us? Because they're gonna know you work for the port for a certain amount of years.
Yes.
And if the state totally runs out of money and they don't fix it, they could come back on the port.
Yes, they're actually, and they're actually, they come back on us. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I was just gonna say, they come back on us anyway. They set our rates every year. They're paying down this unfunded liability over time. One way or another, they're paying it down over time. We are paying it down over time, our portion.
So if nobody else sets up these accounts, we're gonna get hit with all of it anyway.
We're gonna get hit with our rate, no matter what. We can either buy it down in advance.
Yeah.
And hopefully make it worth our
That's the part-
lost
that's the
interest.
part I'm uncomfortable with, hopefully.
Well, and that's where we need some calculations
Mhm.
done from people.
And the reason for bringing this forward is that this is actually paying for a cost reduction on what we're expending out towards PERS.
The cost reduction is gonna be the one piece that I agree I would want, because if you put the $1.2 million into this account, my assumption is it stays there.
Yes,
And if our PERS contribution's around $100,000 a year, you're prepaying 12 years of PERS to get years 13 through 15 for free.
The PERS contributions are closer to 600,000.
So the port pays $600,000 a year, so you're prepaying 2 years, okay.
Yeah.
Because over the course of 12 years, I'd rather take $1.2 million, buy a building and you're gonna get more than $300,000.
but I think the point to this and the reason that we thought it was worthwhile to bring it forward is that we're paying 1.2 million. The state is giving us 300,000. So we're actually putting in 1.5
No,
million.
I understand. My question was, I thought I heard $100,000 a year contribution.
Oh.
So that would make much sense to me there, but if it's 600, that's a lot different.
Yeah.
That 100,000 is the net savings.
So I would say we just need some more information
Right.
before we can make a decision.
Any other of the key issues under A, central service and administration?
Let's see, strategic business plan update. So next year, our business plan is going to be done for its term. So I just want to see if this commission wants to put money in the budget for the next 6-year strategic business plan.
So you would go out and hire somebody?
We do, yes, exactly. Well, I'll get a consultant to do it. There's a grant that will offset some of that cost.
I feel like I would like there to be a little bit more certainty on the future of the bridge before we it could be a driving factor of the next 7 years. And so before we invest money into the strategic exercise, I would like to have some more certainties. Can we push it off a year
Yeah,
or
I
two?
think, I think my recommendation is that you do it in even years because your elections are in odd years. And so what's nice about doing an update on even is that your incoming commissioners have, 9 months to kind of know before diving into it. So you could do it in 28. We'd have like maybe a year, 18 months gap between plans, which isn't the end of the world, but
How does the strategic plan tie into your 10-year? Okay,
well, it's the driving factor for these planning sessions. I mean, what I read to you at the very top of the meeting was pulling those main vision statements, if you will, from that business.
personally, I'm all for doing a strategic plan. What I don't like is hiring somebody from the outside that's gonna run it and do it. And it's that person's, it's not ours. And it's not, even worse, it's not yours. So what I would rather we think about is you take on the ownership of the strategic plan. You hire somebody to assist you. But you as the senior team are the ones that are doing the guts of the program.
Couldn't agree more.
Quick question. I believe this is in the regular meeting packet, the legislative.
Oh, yes.
And there is a bill, I don't know that there is a bill to increase the grant
Correct.
award for doing this,
Correct.
right?
Yes, exactly. It hasn't been passed, so I stuck with the 50K,
Yeah,
but it could go up. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah, that 125 that is being suggested is just simply a budget number. We
Okay.
want to work it down. I want it to be meaningful, especially with this interim period with the bridge, and really be a little bit more proactive on how we go after potential new funding opportunities, but also on the expense reduction side.
I wouldn't wait. And the reason for it, Commissioner, is that the cost of the bridge has gone up. We're unfunded, assuming both states bring the money that they said they were gonna bring, 100 each, and I think they will. We're still out $532 million, which could grow every year that you slide the schedule to the right is at least another $40 million. So that 530 very easily could grow another 100 to 150 million bucks.
Right.
So what we're trying to do right now is get design done. And then it gives us some options. Do we have the funding at that time to keep going, or do we put it on the shelf for a period of time? What happens with inflation, with all the tariffs that are going on right now? Price of material is floating all over the place. That could have a huge impact on the cost of the bridge. So I wouldn't wait. I think you gotta go, you have to make your assumption and work to the assumption.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
I am. So what are we thinking for exact timeline to get cracking on this?
I would think it would be 6 to 9 months.
From now?
Yeah, develop a procurement RFP, it's gonna be a smaller one. We probably want to do some in-plan modeling.
So Christmas.
Yeah, that's probably, we gotta get through this budget cycle.
It's a present to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the real outreach wouldn't happen until the following spring. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and keep moving that one forward. The next one on here, I think is a relatively quick one. We're currently in a study for the admin ops relocation. Just wanted to see their scoring those locations. Do any commissioners want to go through that scoring process? I mean,
Like to see the results of it.
okay, great. That's what I wanted to hear. And then Wasco building was not originally included since we're having some difficulty getting that leased. And administration is an outright use in the light industrial. Should we just go ahead and add it?
Obviously.
Perfect. Okay, that's done. So then that takes you to the Marina Waterfront Rec with Daryl and the parking agreements.
And so with we kind of went through this already. And we have it in the packet. And so are there any questions on that? You guys?
I think we did well.
Different, it's a regular session.
As long as you're happy with it, I think that
Are you going to this Cat Meadows,
Page 65.
parking thing?
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't want to blow through that. I'll talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
So what I see here is we've ignored the cost of people parking their car to jump on the Cat and go up and snow ski. I thought we had a discussion last time or the time before that said we ought to be looking at, if we're trying to maximize revenue, why are we allowing all these cars to park and then ride the bus up to Meadows? And we're basically subsidizing the Meadows. And if they had to build additional parking up there, it would cost them money, which I don't think they have, nor do they have the space for it. So why aren't we considering some kind of a parking fee for private individuals that are hopping on the bus to go up? And it doesn't have to be a lot, but I just think we're losing an opportunity.
So,
And we're subsidizing another company.
so this part of it, we have not negotiated contracts with Mount Hood Meadows. Their rates need to go up. This part of it is for CAT's contract.
I understand, but it's connected.
It is definitely connected.
And what I don't want to do is, okay, we'll slide this one through, but we haven't talked about the other one. When are we going to talk about the other one?
Well, I need to have a meeting with Meadows, which I have scheduled, and work through what would be equitable. So the part of our problem with, if we start charging, then we have to figure out how we're gonna staff that.
Or
And
you go on the honor system?
mhm.
we have passes. A lot of the people that take the bus up already do have passes. But we have to set a new fee for Meadows and their employee and their buses. So that's the one part of it that we still have to work through. We put this on here early because we wanted CAT to be able to figure out their budget and get their funding. So we moved that up. Normally, we don't talk with Meadows till later in the year, but we don't.
Can't we talk to them now?
How about this? Why don't we just, I'm sure between Daryl and Ryan, they can make a pretty educated guess on how many cars per day, per week, per season are down there riding that bus. Make the fee charge to Meadows reflective of that number. Don't worry about the staffing of writing tickets. Just make the single charge reflective. And if it's different than CAT's, it's different than CAT's.
I personally don't want to agree to this until I see the other one.
That's fine too.
It's
That's fine too, but I think you can make it a lot
deal.
easier on staff to just run those numbers and that's the fee you come up with.
So for CAT, if they have to pay a whole lot more, so what this is about is what we're gonna charge CAT. Because we have to start.
I understand that.
Okay,
I think this is a package deal. The negotiation with CAT and the negotiation with Meadows. It's tied together that Meadows wants to park cars on our lot. And they want the people to go climb on CAT to ride up to their facility. That's why I think it's a package deal. I don't want to negotiate with CAT without getting a negotiation with Meadows. That's me. I want to.
I think we did the math a couple months ago. I think the max is probably 10K for the season.
that's what
At
we
$5.
wanted there.
So if they've got, if we got CAT with 2K, then theoretically Mount Hood Meadows would be the 8K.
Mhm.
It's
I
one
just
way.
want to see the numbers. Show me the numbers.
Yeah, we did bring those, at the last, in the ED report. But we can certainly get
I'd
those
like
back
to
out.
see the whole thing. One discussion.
Well,
I think that's
is
what
that
we-
something that's on consent agenda today or in there somewhere?
It's just the cat one because their budget, Commissioner Beaker was hoping to have this since they're going through their budget process now.
So month, we don't care if it's a month later, but they might. Right, that's what you're saying, okay.
Could we find out when they need the final answer and could we get the numbers and then, you know, to take the one step further into consideration, I do believe there's a trifecta. There's there's Meadows. We need to negotiate equitable fees for them. But then there's also this idea of stewardship to the public and what is our obligation to support our community in getting families and youth up to the mountain for recreation purposes, which is also a driving factor of the port. And so
Right, and it's a
The-
benefit, it's a
the
benefit
trifecta.
that truly is for our constituents. It's not tourists coming in and visiting for a weekend and using it, it's people who live here.
Right.
For my part, I'm fine with what you've negotiated with Cat. And then I support the recommendation, which is to approve the deal with Cat and to move forward. I know Meadows has been very, very busy. Their people are very busy. They're still in their season. I like this idea of a flat fee of $6,000 for Meadows for them to like, that basically covers what Commissioner Fox is talking about in my mind. So I'm fine supporting the recommendation here.
And is it also true that this is the following year, everything's up in the air again because there's going to be an entirely different system in place. So this isn't going to be kind of setting the standard for what is ongoing. This is a single use season.
Yeah, and I did talk to Amy Schlappy, and if you recall, a couple of ED reports ago, I said that the program is funded by $190,000 federal grants. She's not sure that program's even gonna be there.
Can we, Mike, would it work if we, since Cat's a little bit stressed for time, run that through, agree to that, and then when it comes to the next one, not only ask staff to come back to us with a recommended dollar amount to charge, but what's the total, you know, how many cars, how much should we be charging, what's the top number? As far as how many cars, how many everything, we need to collect 20 grand, we need to collect 10 grand, it doesn't matter. Well, then we know also
Here's what I
where that comes from.
would agree with. I'm okay doing this as long as we take an action item out of this meeting. That by the next commission meeting, which is a month away, we have our position for Mount Hood Meadows. What do we want to negotiate with them? And ideally, you've got a tentative agreement with us that you're bringing to us for approval.
Yeah, I think the numbers
As
we
long
want
as
to see
you
is,
put it as an action item. And the first thing we look at next time is, did we meet the action?
yeah, I just think, I don't want to just see a number, I'd like to see how we got to that, what data was used.
And what specific data is you?
I guess I'd like to know if 10 cars are down there over the course of the winter, that's one thing. If 10,000 are there over the course of the winter, that's another thing.
Like-
I don't have a clue. And that's why I'm not gonna, if you come back and say, we should charge them 5 grand, I'm not gonna know if that's adequate or accurate. I don't know.
I think you need to put together a study that says, based on the best information we've been able to gather, we think private parking is about this much during these periods in the wintertime. And a reasonable price to charge them for parking is this. Now, do you charge them individually, or do you put that into a charge to where they're going? That could be a recommendation. And maybe you have a discussion with Mount Hood Meadows during that time. And maybe what we end up doing, because of what you said, maybe we give them a discount. But I think not charging them is too much of a discount.
Wait, not charging who?
Meadows.
Meadows.
Okay.
So is it fair to say, in the essence of moving this along, is everyone comfortable with the agreement since Cat is working through their budget? To say this is fair and reasonable. But there's a second item that needs to be brought back to the next meeting with some additional information for us to,
set the rate for
set the rate.
Mount Hood Meadows.
for 1 year.
For 1 year,
Yes.
for parking costs for the 1 year.
Is that fair? Helpful? Everyone okay? Okay. Moving on. Waterfront parking lot.
The only question here is things are proceeding. I want to just make sure that the commission's fine with construction taking place during potentially our busiest time of the summer. So that's the discussion.
So you wanna, the question is, should we build it during the summertime so it's ready for the shoulder season, or should we just build it in shoulder season? We're not gonna be making revenue anyway.
Well, there's two things there. My thought is that stuff is getting more expensive. If we build it as soon as possible, we save on any future costs.
The amount of headache that I think of construction, wayfinding, flagging, general chaos.
Not gonna couple of months, not a couple of months.
I think, I've been told that it can be constructed in 30 to 45 days.
But if we wait 30 to 45 days, I don't think materials are gonna go up exponentially. We could
No.
even,
Likely have to wait till fall, October, November.
but could we procure materials to guarantee pricing? Store them until the end.
Most of it's
I
asphalt.
was just asking.
When the asphalt plants close is what we need to know, which what's that, October?
By November.
Yeah, so we wanna make sure that's done, but I mean, if you can start this after Labor Day and get it done before asphalt plants close, that seems to make the most sense.
I think there's a
Yeah.
different question to ask, and that is, where are we on the other capital projects that this is competing with? i.e., the RV park, storage area up in Odell. That one by itself doesn't impact the public. We could go up there and pour concrete and set steel and put a roof and do the grading that we may need. There's permit issues, I understand, that we've got to work through, but is that a better place to put our money today? Knowing that if we could get that built by the end of the summer, it's perfect for the winter season storing rigs there.
I think it's a question of both, and I like what you're saying of, we wanna get the asphalt in before the plants close at the end of the season. Cause then we lose another season.
Or you sequence it that you're ready to go as soon as the asphalt opens up. And get it in quickly, so you get all the prep work done during the winter time when you can do that. That's not winter sensitive.
Then you might see more expense if you're waiting 6 to 9 months for
Yeah.
business winter.
Can I just jump in here for a sec? The storage unit stuff at Odell is a ways off.
Why?
Because we need to go through and have a pre-app with the county. We don't have any of the preliminary design. I mean, we don't even have any budget authority to even start doing engineering or design work. I mean, we've been working on the design for the parking lots for, quite a while. I mean, we have to bring those procurement documents because of the size of the contract back to you. I was hoping to have them today. But one of the things I wanted to make sure, and I appreciate after Labor Day, I mean, my takeaway from this conversation is when we're putting in the construction contract schedule, that we don't have construction or mobilization happen until after Labor Day.
I think the day after Labor Day is perfect, get it done before the plants close, that way we're not affecting businesses on the port this summer, recreation on the port this summer, everything on the port this summer.
Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is make sure that calendar includes mobilization starting after Labor.
Why,
Fair.
could they get it done before Labor Day?
Well, that's the whole thing I
You're
was
saying
asking.
the busiest time, so are you thinking that it wouldn't get done until like July?
No, same
I mean,
question.
it wouldn't start until July.
Yeah, I mean, I
What's the earliest they could get it done if we get the go ahead right now?
I would have liked to have brought you the procurement documents a month ago, and so that's what I'm, and then we're gonna be chasing the contractor on the back end to make sure they're getting out of here by the time stuff
They didn't get paid.
picks up.
Well,
Any progress, I mean, any possibility for them to do May?
I'll try to get we might have to do a special meeting to approve the procurement
I
document.
say, May, if we would, how much money we'll be losing this summer from potential parking.
If you can get it done before the 4th of July, that's the exact same argument.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say 4th of July to Labor Day is awesome. If we can do it outside of
Yeah,
that
I'd
window.
really like to do it ASAP if that's possible.
Okay, so if we can't finish it before July 4th, we won't start until Labor Day.
Is that fair?
So
Perfect, yeah.
another thing to consider in your contract language. If you want them, if you're gonna turn them loose now, but they gotta be out by
July
July 4th. Put some penalties in there that for every day they miss, it's a big number.
Maybe, or,
Good idea.
thank you.
Yeah,
I think that would be the preference too. Just so you get the revenue.
absolutely, absolutely.
I agree. Okay, airport, yeah,
There are questions on something specific? The Jeanette Road site, we've gone through a couple of different iterations of what could be done there. What I'm working on right now is actually meeting with the county and trying to get everything to a place where they would say, yes, this would be an approved and maximize what we can actually have for the structure to lease on each of those sites. If the county and the board was in agreement that we don't have to have this great big parking lot, then let's lease it as building site. And that's what I'm actually trying to get the county and the city to agree to. And that I don't have anything more than that on the Jeanette Road site at this point. Kevin and I have pretty well maxed out the building footprints. And now it's just a matter of getting I'd like to have something in writing from the county that this would be approved. That's where.
So when I look back at the 10-year plan, where in that 10-year plan have you built in, we're gonna have this structure by here, we're gonna have this structure by there, we're gonna have that by then?
That was actually in mine, and I think what I put in there was, the more likely one, which was the South Apron T hangers are in there for sure. But then other than that, and actually I wasn't aware of the Jeanette Road thing, the lease. So that was not in there. Oh, is it small? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, some of the smaller stuff may not have gotten in there too. But the T hangers, the South Apron T hangers are in there. And
Yeah, that's the year the airport goes to the black.
yes, the year of the T hangers. Yay. And then the AWAS. I don't know that I have the tree survey in there. I have something in there for AWAS because I wasn't sure exactly where we're going with AWAS. But that's what's for expense, of course, because that's not a money generator.
Commissioner Fox, unfortunately, we talked before, these land leases are so small
Mhm.
for the amount of effort that it's we're just trying to get it teed up so that somebody will want to come in there, and hopefully that raises the activity out there for
I just gotta mention it, and maybe it's not for today, but I think other commissioners are gonna have to think about it. When do you have the discussion, do we really wanna keep the airport, or do we get rid of it? It doesn't look like to me, we're gonna be lucky to break even. And even if we find a moneymaker, it's gotta stay with the airport. So when do we say, hey, it's better to put all of our emphasis outside the port and outside of the airport and get rid of it?
One thing I was gonna say is,
it's gonna be breaking even here.
yeah, I was gonna say, I appreciate how much work Jeff has put in over the last years to show us the potential of the possibility that we might be able to right the ship a little bit.
So I guess as I look at it from that 10-year perspective, the piece I see, Kevin's point, the land leases are horrible. I mean, there's very, very minute income off of the land lease. That's the bad thing. The best way to do, like looking at the South Apron T hangers, I'm going to continue to pursue funding for port-owned buildings, because that's where the money's at, is in the lease of the building.
I think that's the strategy then. If we really want to keep the airport, then we've got to kind of change the strategy to really go after the grants as much as we can.
Yep.
And build the airport up around that.
And to both of you and Ben's point, to have the structure, do you invest do you invest that money that you're referring to into that vertical structure so that we can have the business relocate to?
Yeah.
Here, I mean, is there an avionics company? I don't know the answer to that, is what business comes, but right now they don't have the ability to come anywhere, the Dallas or
Nowhere to go.
so.
That was my big concern about the airport. How long do you let it go before you have that discussion that?
I don't have an answer for you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of a public owner and they're,
Yeah,
everybody else is.
Give it back to the county.
well, I do.
Already
appreciate-
right.
I just appreciate that we're really starting to look at these differences, working with community. I appreciate the commissioners for rolling up their sleeves or just, I'm happy with the
We're
direction.
doing the right thing.
I know.
We need another project like the South Apron T hangers. I mean, if there's any specific questions on that one, the port's making a substantial investment in this building because we didn't have enough funding associated with the Phil grant and some of the pieces of it, but it's going to cash flow, man. It's to our point, it's gonna cause us to get that airport real close to self-sustaining.
So can we accelerate? Or are you accelerating as fast as you go?
On getting that built as fast as we can go.
I think we're bringing procurement documents to them in May, right?
Yes. Yeah, end of May.
So if you brought it to us next week, can we accelerate that by 4 weeks?
Not with the speed that the FAA is going right now, because everything, I mean, there's just a series of steps that we are pushing it to the timeline. We actually just got the FAA to allow us 6 more days in our schedule so that we can get grant documents to them 6 days later than before, just because of the timing on getting stuff done between.
Well, if you're waiting for them to approve something, it's gonna take you longer than what they're telling you. That's what we're finding on the bridge. I mean, everything is in paralysis right now.
We've got a pretty good relationship with our planners and whatnot, and that's, as I was referring to before the meeting, we've covered all the bases now with the environmental, and it's literally, we have to walk through the rest of the steps, get you the procurement documents so you guys can sign off on them. They will go directly back into, we'll put it out to bid. And then all of that scope and fee has to come back through us, through the FAA for their approval, and then we go out to
I'll
bid.
buy you lunch if all of that works like you think it's gonna.
You try cities.
The one thing that we do need to get formal acknowledgement by the board on is the fact that the 13 units were not going to work out. Right. So just so you know, we were given direction to go after a 13 unit hangar bank, and that isn't going to happen. So we're going back to the 10, Jeff.
Just as a reference, from the west end of that gravel to the east end of that gravel, there's 4.5 feet of elevation change. We're having to stair step the building, which is drove the cost of the project up. By eliminating the 13 unit, it will allow a 50 by 50 building to be able to be built on that east end closest to the maintenance hangar there. It'll be another buildable site, whether the airport owns it. I mean, again, it would be one of those ones, if we put a 50 by 50 building up, somebody's gonna rent it. And it's going to be better. Run the numbers and find out, get a rough return on investment for that, because the space is needed. There's people out there. Yep.
Are you still discussing the potential of some sort of like public-private partnership with building?
Terminal building?
Yeah, a terminal building that the port could inhabit part of? Yeah, we talked
Yeah,
about
that-
that a while ago.
That is under projects underway, informational reports. So I can touch on that when we get in there, just a couple minutes.
Just poking at you.
You're fine.
Fun-wise.
Keep focused.
Page 79. Just to show you everything stuff. We said 95% design review completed by FAA on 5/6. 3 days later, we have 100% submittal. So are they gonna have to
It's gonna be a
re-review
good
the
one.
100% submittal?
It should have. We've shared this same document with the FAA, and she's assured us that she'll get her review done.
I'm just concerned you submit the 95% design. They take a while to review it. Get 100% 3 days later. Are they gonna have to re-review it?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
She hasn't in the past. We've been able to, Precision Approach does a really good job with their 95% submittals and all the way through this process. I was on the phone with her this morning, our FAA rep this morning, and we're literally she knows most of the design stuff. She's already seen most of it. And so it's just a matter of here's the complete package and stamp the document.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so this next section, as long as there's no other questions, projects underway, informational updates. And when I say informational, again, appreciate everyone's information packet, and this is for if anyone has additional questions.
So just to address Heather's comment about the Airport Operations Center. So if you recall, we've got the hazard mitigation plan where we put in their emergency operations center. The county we're having difficulty getting support from the county to agree to this being placed at the airport. It's going to take some work with the sheriff and the fire departments because they would like to do the county administrator would like to have a single administrative building where all of that can be housed in a single building because they're all having issues with their.
Do they have a problem in building such a facility at the airport?
What I've been told is that not all of the folks like the sheriff, for example, doesn't think that that's necessarily the best place for an EOC.
Oh, do they want it closer into the city limits or?
Need to find out.
Okay.
And I think the point is that this structure that's coming out of the county could be 9 digits,
Mhm.
a nine figure structure. And so they don't want to necessarily give up the hazard mitigation plan funding source if that can be a part of their financing package for a larger administrative complex. So that being said, that's not to say that there aren't other programs out there, but that hazard mitigation plan was kind of an exciting one. But it's going to take some work to build up the
Can we just
coalition.
make sure that we put it out there that we are very amenable to sharing of
Absolutely.
having all the resources in one facility?
We bring the land to them and we'll share in the cost of building it.
It's pretty central located land too.
Yeah. And in an emergency, it's probably gonna stay there.
Would a piece like that become a revenue generating piece? I mean, is that something you looked at Jeanette Roadside and turn that into a commercial? I mean, it would be an operations center where you could have emergency equipment in it. You could have fire life and safety, what all these different components, but does that become a revenue stream to the airport in years forward?
Well, I think the issue is would the county administration be paying a fee for a building that they would want to retain as their own? So I guess it's something that we're exploring. It's in the comprehensive economic development strategy, which is in the ED report. So it's been voted in as a project. But we have some work to do with the county to put it out at the airport.
We just have to make a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
But to your point, Heather, that yes, there is still an opportunity for some private public stuff. And I am in communication with a couple of people that are interested in building a building, but they want to know what does that look like? What's their return? I mean, is it a 5-year lease and we buy it back from them? Is it a long-term lease? So some of those pieces. So I'm trying to get some real numbers on what it would take to build that building. Would they do it?
So anything else? I mean, if there's anything that you see in those project updates.
Well, what I'm seeing is a bunch of places where it says staff is recommended, so.
Yeah.
We do need to address those things, right?
So which ones?
For instance, under bridge transportation, recommendation to add $1 million for a project.
So the way that I use this, you don't need to make a motion.
Yeah.
But if there's a head nod, then we'll include that in the budget document that comes to the full budget committee next month.
Yeah, and then moving down, there's the request for 25,000 at the airport to to connect sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just those things, and further down the right-of-way acquisition, you've got under bridge replacement, there's
Yes.
20,000. Ask, there's, real estate development. There's a couple. So,
What I didn't see in this document, which I think is really went here. Versus what we saw from Debbie, this is Tim here. I didn't see anything on lot one development.
So that would be.
Last 2 pages of the document.
That's the,
Last 2 pages in your entire package.
that's the roundabout at Second Riverside on page 84.
I'm just asking for some for Jen.
I didn't ask for any.
Yeah, I saw the roundabout. What I'm talking about is the next piece, which is what are we gonna do with that whole open area there?
Yeah, I think we have to first.
And that needs to get, to me, it needs to get into the 10-year plan. An aspirational chunk. And what you're doing with the roundabout is getting us ready to move into that type of a thing.
All correct, but I don't think now is the time to start putting definitions on what we want to do there. We're still working with ODOT on what we can do there. And we're still working through the process of getting ODOT's blessing on transportation infrastructure. We don't want to change anything right now, meaning come up with something they don't know about, because you would be starting from scratch. That needs to be, we need to get through that process first. Did I say that correctly? Yeah.
Yes.
This will be a great agenda item. Dive into more next spring planning. We've got a couple more boxes checked.
So they're doing their analysis based on the information we've given them. If we decide to change something, we start right now. Something we want to do. We're not locked into anything, but we need to let that process. We're halfway through.
And this is the.
When do you expect the roundabout to be done, open for?
28, I believe, is construction. There's a date on the schedule. We can give you the schedule. It was in your last packet, but
And
I think it's
I don't
28.
remember it. 28.
But the discussion of what happens to lot one will be before 28 after.
I think by June, we hope to have a complete blessing on everything. Yeah. As far as
I
to
think
move
it's
forward.
gonna take you 2 years to figure out with the public
It's
what
taken
that lot's gonna
22.
look.
I would say by June, if we get the okay, June, we start having our next conversation. So that's why this money is
Next fiscal year, because June, we should hope to have our decision and then be able to move forward from that.
I think you need, if you're really doing a 10-year plan, then you need to at least put a block in that 10-year plan that says, we're gonna decide what we're gonna do in this development area.
That's fine, as long as we're not specific, saying we want to do this here, like Christmas time. If we're gonna decide, if we're a placeholder of a time to do that, sure, we just can't be specific or.
Can't wait for Christmas.
And I get that, I totally get it with ODOT. I'm just saying, if we're really gonna be pure with a 10-year plan, that's not in here.
We can put it like in a bubble on the side.
I guess put some big numbers,
Yeah,
but we don't really have a scope for it yet.
that could be fair.
Otherwise, it's not a 10-year plan.
Did you want to touch on some of these other issues, Kevin?
Yes, it's basically commission comments. If there's questions on those, I didn't think that they.
Or from our budget committee?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the commission's workshop, so.
I agree that it's time to throw in the towel with the Coast Guard.
Yes.
Okay. We tried,
Throw in the towel, Coast Guard.
as far as trying to get them to shorten our, or lengthen rather, our notice period for bridge lifts.
I think now we're basically, we're gonna react to something that breaks.
Yeah.
Or falls over.
Yep. And I mean,
Oh, well.
that's right, it's gonna be in a wall.
But I did, maybe we talked just a little bit about your painting program. So I went through it, I know you did too.
Yep.
But we're talking about spot cleaning, which means that they're gonna go into a joint and there's leaves and gunk in that joint, they gotta clean that out and repaint that area. Now, when they clean that out, have you gotten far enough? Are they gonna have to sandblast that area to get it clean?
Well, this is where I would defer to Manager Clapridge.
So on the paint project, it's not only the crotch of these areas, it's also the gusset plates, which is the main concern.
Yep.
Because it's getting pack rust.
Yep.
Behind the plates, which could.
Yep.
You know, do some damage.
Yep.
So I've asked HDR to get a coating specialist that looks at these types of situations. Because right now we have random engineers that aren't coating specialists.
Yep.
Looking at these places.
Yep.
Depending on the skill level of each engineer that goes down there, you could be getting different reports. So going past the last 10, 12 years, looking at their report, it all stays the same until this last year, then there's a little uptick in a couple of areas. Well, it's a different inspector. So is he seeing the same thing the guy did 10 years ago? Or is it now finally starting to grow and escalate? So the only way to figure that out without having a safety concern is get somebody that knows what they're looking at dealing with, if it's gonna be a project or not.
Where I'm really going with this, Ryan.
They will call that out.
Yeah, your estimate could be off by huge numbers.
Yes.
If they have to tint various regions on that bridge and then sandblast it and collect the dust,
Yes.
which I think you're gonna have to do if it's more than just a little tiny spot.
So depending on, and this is what we discussed, is we don't wanna go that far. Because with the life expectancy of having a new bridge, we don't want to spend all this money to get us out 20 years when we just need to get it going for the life that we need.
I think it's worth having the discussion with your engineers. If you do this spot work, how long do they expect that you could extend the life? Because I can honestly say we could have a bridge done by 31. It would be 20 years after that.
We're hoping right now for just some hand tooling, not having to do the whole containment process. And work through just a couple bad spots.
You know, there's quite a few spots, at least on your drawing.
There is, and that's why we're hoping that the ropes team that knows what they're looking at can maybe either look at these and say they're not an issue, or maybe we do find some other areas and we have to.
And then it's methodology, how are you gonna?
Yes, yep.
Are you going with a bucket? Articulated bucket, or are you gonna have to close half the bridge to tint it off?
Yeah.
That's got a huge swing. We're not talking $1 million. We're talking.
It does,
multi-million.
And that's kind of why we put that in our budget on it, is so because it could go to multi-millions if we let it. We don't want to go there. We just want to hit the most critical spots that make sense.
But Mike, you would agree, the approach that we're pursuing is kind of the approach we have to pursue.
Oh, you know,
Because from past bridge meetings, maybe this is new information for some people, the assessments for what it would take to do a really comprehensive paint project, we just can't afford. But the engineers, I think, have been pretty unanimous in saying that the bridge is structurally sound right now. And if we continue to take care of it with these spot treatments, we should be able to keep it that way, so.
If it takes 20 years for a new bridge, can we keep it by spot treating it?
say that again.
If it takes 20 years for a new bridge, is it still
I think it's reasonable
Without
to think,
any
yeah.
major?
I mean,
I
I
have to go
Earthquake.
20
we
years.
get into kind of but so far the inspections from ODOT every 2 years say bridge is structurally sound.
Yeah.
But there will become a point, it's kind of like a,
Right, and we just can't predict that.
and at some point, the next step is we're gonna have to weight restrict further. And then finally take trucks off the bridge and then eventually take the cars off, and then you close it. And it's coming. We can't tell you exactly when it's gonna happen, but it's not that far out there. And even if we can make it go 20 years, the bridge is weak. And all it would take is a good bridge strike, or if we have an earthquake, or we have a big truck go through the side, push the side. So there's lots of things that can happen. Or the lift span gets stuck and rack it.
We won't go there.
Okay, well, with that, project's underway. Did you get the thumbs ups that you needed to continue to pursue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Most of them are just budget, they'll reappear in the budget box.
and is there any other, or can I go to adjourn the work session? So I'd just like to note that it is 3:11. We'll adjourn. Pre-planning work session is now adjourned. We will begin the Fort Oakland River Foundation meeting in 5 minutes. Online viewers will be disconnected and must reconnect using the same meeting link in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.